Okay, so now let's start creating a new project, and let's use the template of trigger-based attended automation. So here, let's name our project as Help Desk Agent Automation. Okay, so now we just created this template of attended automation. And we can see that we have some pre-existing activities. And here we can delete some activities because we don't need all of them. So let's delete the click trigger, delete key press trigger, and also the 3 activities below comment. So let's delete them. Okay, and let's save the bot. And also, if you haven't created the Excel file for the request, let's go ahead and create. So let's go to our project folder. And as I said, we should create 2 folders, one named requests. And this folder will hold all the Excel files to be processed. And we'll create the second folder named process. And in this folder, we will store any files that are already processed. And in the requests, let's create a new Excel file. And let's name it as request. Okay, and then let's create a table following the slide that I presented earlier. So we will have contact name, email, and subject. So here I will use my own name and my email, for example, and the subject. So I can say internet issue. Okay, so let's save this. All right, so now we're good to go. Okay, so as you can see in this template, we have this monitor agent action, and there is a hotkey trigger. So this means this is how you can configure this attended automation, right? So let's say we want to have this hotkey of here I just randomly choose one, and you can choose your own. So let's say S, key S. So once we run the bot, and then we press key S, the automation will start. So before this, let's add a message box. So let's go to activity and get a message box. And put the message box before the monitor agent action. So here we want to give the user information that the bot is ready. Please press key S to start the automation. Okay. In here, the comment activity is another way that you can put any annotations. So here we can put the comment by going to the text. And let's say this bot is to create a Zoho request ticket. Okay. All right, so once we start the bot and then the user trigger the automation by sending the key S, then the bot will check whether there is a file in the request folder. So to do that, we are going to use a activity called path exist. So let's search path exists, and then we bring that activity underneath comment. So here path type file, right? Because we are looking at whether a file exists. Here in the path, let's create a variable in the variable panel, and let's call this path as str request file path. And let's set the default as so if we go to the project folder, the file is within request, right? So here let's use environment dot current directory. So this basically means the path of the project folder. right? And then we use the string concatenation to indicate where the file is located. So use a slash requests, and then another slash request.xlsx. So make sure you don't have spelling issues. So like in my case, I use requests as the folder name, but there's no S in the Excel file. So make sure that your name is consistent. Okay. So then we put the path here, string request path. All right, and then so the activity of path exists will give you a Boolean outcome of true or false, indicating whether or not the file exists. So let's create a Boolean variable in the output. So let's use create variable and say Boolean or BOOL file exists. Okay, so as you can see in your variable panel, this variable is added and the variable type is Boolean. So here, if it exists, this variable will take the value of true. Otherwise, it will take the value of false. So if the file exists, we are going to trigger the second workflow, right? So here we have a if-then decision point. So let's add an activity of if-then. In the condition here, we can just use the Boolean file exists. And here we do not need to indicate Boolean equals true because here the Boolean value will just take true or false, and if it's true, it will go to the route of then. If it's false, then it will go to the route of else. So if your condition is already a Boolean variable, there is no need to add other things here. Just the variable itself is enough. So if we have the file, then we'll trigger the second workflow, right? But before that, we can use a message box to notify the user that the file is there and the bot is ready to generate the ticket. So we'll say that the request file is available and the bot will generate the ticket. However, if the file does not exist, we can also use a message box indicating that the request file does not exist. And then coming back to the then, because if the file exists, we are going to invoke the second workflow, right? So here, let's first add this invoke workflow underneath the message box. So now we are going to generate our second workflow, right? So we leave it here because we know, this is something that we're going to do next. So let's go to first save the bot, and then create a new workflow of the sequence, and we can name it as read Excel request. Okay, so now this workflow will be responsible for reading the Excel file, the request file, and get the values and save the values into variables, and then transmit that data back to main. So here we are going to use the arguments, right? So let's go ahead and create arguments. So first, for this workflow to run, we need to know where the file is located, right? So our first argument should be the path of the request file. So let's say request file path, and the direction is in because we have the direction from the main, right? And that value is stored in the variable of string request file path. So we'll bring in this value into the argument of request file path. So here the direction is in. And we are going to have other arguments. So the first one, let's call it contact name. And the direction should be out because this is something that we get from this workflow, and we will transmit this value to the main workflow, right? So it will go out eventually. We also need to get an argument of email, and also the direction is out. And an argument of subject, and the direction is also out. Okay, so now we have the arguments ready, and now let's go ahead and configure the activities here. So here, let's use a try and catch to review that we can use try and catch to capture any potential exceptions. So in the try, this is where we read the Excel file to get the values. So here, let's use a read range. Let's use the read range from the workbook because that's easier. So we use the read range. And here, the workbook path, here we can just use the request file path that we created here. It's an argument, right? So here, this is the path, the file path that we're going to use. Since we're getting the entire table, let's leave the range as blank. And in the property, you need to make sure that you uncheck add headers. Because remember, when we created the file, the table is actually different from other tables, right? Because we have all the field names stored in the, so there's no header, basically. So the field names are stored in the first column and the values in the second column. So here we do not use headers. Otherwise, we will have missing information. And here, let's store the table that we read from this file as into a variable called DT, standing for data table of DT request. Okay, and you can see the variable from the variables panel here. All right, and now let's go ahead and assign the values to our variables. So here, after we read the table, we want to assign the value of contact name to the argument of contact name, and so on and so forth for email and subject. So let's use assign. So since we have three variables, right? Contact name, subject, and email, let's use three assign activities here. And the first variable argument that we're interested in is the contact name. The second is email. The third is subject. Okay. So now the issue is what should we use as the VB? And here, this is something slightly different from what we did before. So let me first open the request file. Okay, so if you recall from our earlier projects where we use a for each loop. So when we use a for each loop, we use something like row and then row and some number in parentheses, right? So for example, 0. So we use this kind of format to represent any values stored in the first column for each row. But here we are not having any for each. So we need to use another way to represent the values stored in a particular cell. So here the format is, let me type in here. So first, the data table that we're working on is DT request, right? And then this is where the syntax comes from. So we should use row. And here, different from before, this number will represent the row number. So if we look at the file again, let's say if I want to capture the contact name, it's in row number 1 and second column, right? So let me put it here, row of 1 and column 2. And here in this syntax, we will put the index of row first. So if it's in the first row, it's going to be indexed as 0. And we need to put the index of the column behind it. So here it's in the second column, so it's indexed as 1. And we need to convert it to string. Okay, so this is what we are going to put in the VB. So I hope this is clear, right? So if we do not have any for each loops, this is how we indicate what cell, like which cell are we reading. So here, when you use a data table dot row, and then you put the index of the row first and the index of the column in the second place. So here, since the contact name, email, subject, all the values are stored in the second column, so we can hold this index 1 as constant, and we change the index of rows. So for the email, it will be row 1, 1, and then for subject, it will be row 2, 1, right? So I hope this is clear. Okay, and here I have an error because it should be rows. So it's data table rows, and your row index, column index, and toString. All right, and actually we can copy and paste for the following assign activities and just need to change the row index. So for email, it will be request rows 1, 1. And then for subject, it will be row 2, 1. Okay? So here, until now, we obtained all the values for each variable. And here, if we want to like document everything, we can use a log message activity. And we can set the log level as info because we are just documenting any information until this step. And we can put a message as Excel values captured. Okay, so now we complete the try block of this try catch activity. And then in the catches, as you remember, usually we can set the exception as system.exception. And then we can also use a log message when any exception happen, and we set the log level as error because when exception happen, that's where the error comes from. And then here the message can be fail to extract values from Excel due to this error. And then we can add the error message from the exception here. Okay. So if we have any exceptions in reading the values from Excel, we can then maybe terminate the workflow, right? So let's put the terminate workflow here and set the exception as exception, and the reason we can use cannot capture values from Excel. Okay, so now we completed the workflow for the read Excel request, and then let's save this file. And then let's go back to the main, and we come back to the invoke workflow file where we connect the second workflow to the main workflow. So let's go ahead and make the connection. So we choose read Excel request. And here, if you click on the import arguments, you should see that the arguments are automatically populated. And if you do not see the values here, you need to make sure that you saved your read Excel request. So unless you save it, you won't see the arguments here. So make sure that you save the second workflow first. All right, so here, this is where we make the connections between the variables in the main workflow and the arguments. So here we are connecting the variable of string request path to the argument of request path. And then in this way, the values of the request file path will be transmitted to the second workflow. And here, we need to connect the contact name to some variable in the main workflow, but we haven't created that yet. So let's go ahead and create these variables. So let's come back to the variable panel of the main workflow and create 3 variables. So the first one, let's name it as string contact name, and set the scope into event handler. The second variable, string email, and also in the event handler. And also we need to have string of subject, event handler. Okay, so now we can go ahead and redo this. So we connect string of file path to the argument of request file path, and here is string contact name, string of email, string of subject, and click OK. And we can double check. All right. So here, actually now we can run the workflow for now to see whether it's working. And if we want to see whether we capture the values, we can use a message box here. We can put string of contact name. If we want to add a line in between, let's use environment dot a new line, and add string of the email, and also environment dot new line, and then add string of the subject. Okay, so now let's run the bot and see whether we can run until the second workflow. So let's run. Okay, I guess I need to first close this. Don't save. All right, so first, the message box says, okay, now the bot is ready. Please press key S to start automation. I said okay. And now I need to press key S. So I'm clicking the key S, which you cannot see. So now I see that, okay, the file is available and the bot will generate the ticket. Okay. All right, so we can see that the values are correctly presented here. So it means that everything is good so far. And interestingly, as you can see, normally until the last step, I mean, after the bot finishes the last step, the bot will stop, right? And you will see UiPath popping up. But since we are doing attended automation here, it won't stop unless I go to UiPath and hit stop. So this is how you stop the bot. In some cases, you can also add another hotkey trigger to stop the bot, but that's for some future work. So in this project, we do not need to worry about that. So if you are going to stop the bot, you need to manually open it and stop it. Okay. So now we are good with our existing work. So now let's go ahead and create our third workflow. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new sequence, and let's name it as Zoho automation. Okay, so here we also need arguments. So first, let's think about what do we need. We need the data of contact name, ticket, email, and subject, right? Because we need that information to generate the ticket. Also, we are going to generate a Boolean result of whether or not the ticket generation is successful, and then send it back to the main, right? So here we need 3 arguments. So the first argument, we can create the same, let's say, contact name. Here, the direction is in, right? Because we need to get the data from the main. And we need the email, and the direction is in. Also subject, direction is also in. And we are going to create a Boolean variable called successful. And the direction should be out because that is the result we are going to send to the main. And here the argument type should be a Boolean because it's true or false, right? Successful or not. All right, so now we are good to go. So we also want to use our try and catch to capture any exceptions. Okay, so now we're going to use some web automation techniques to automate the process of generating the ticket on the Zoho website. So now make sure that you have your Zoho tab opened, and please open it in Chrome. If you have other browsers, that should be fine, but you need to make sure that you have the correct browser type in your web activities. Okay, so let me first manually illustrate how we are going to generate a new ticket. So manually, we would start from the main page, right? This is the home page. And you go to the home page by clicking tickets. Okay, so this is where we start. And you to create a new ticket, you click the add button. And then here you put all the information, and then you click submit. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. So let's use a web recording to configure these steps. So let's use a web, and then let's click record. So let's first click the add button. So now we will go to this page, and then contact name, let's click here. And do we want to use an anchor? Let's indicate anchor as the contact name. And here you can type anything. So I'm gonna type like just say name 1, 2, 3, because this is actually a placeholder, right? Because we are going to replace the value we type in with the variable, right? So here you can type in anything. And here email, we indicate and then use an anchor. Here email, although you can type in anything, you need to make sure that you have the email format. So here I'll use anything at gmail.com. Make sure that you have the correct at someemail.com because this website has an automatic format checking. So if you are not using some email format, it will not let you proceed. So make sure that you have something like at email.com. And then we need subject. So when you click on the subject, it's not popping up the anchor, so it's fine. You can just go ahead. So I'm just going to use any subject. And then click submit. All right. So if you are at this page, you should be fine. So the number doesn't matter because I have already created several tickets. So my number might be different from yours, but it doesn't matter unless as long as you are at this page. All right. So let's exit and save. Let's first collapse the web recording that you just did and bring that to the try. And then let's continue working on this. Okay, so now let's go to the attached browser. and in the output, let's create a variable named Zoho browser. Okay, and in the selector, let's make it generalizable. So if you go to the website, which I will show you later, it actually has the number of the ticket at the beginning. So here, you just need to add, for example, here my username is RPA for 2020, and yours might be different, but you just need to add a wildcard before and after your name. So this is what I do. Like your name can be different, but you just need to add 2 wildcards here. Okay, then let's click OK. So we have the attached browser ready. And similar to what we did before, we want to have activate, right? So because sometimes you may have different browsers open, and we just want to activate the Chrome. So let's indicate. And as you can see, since all the activities is in the container of the attached browser, the selectors does not matter here because we are inside the container. And we also want to maximize the window, right? Okay, and here, make sure that you change what you type into the field as your argument of contact name. And here in the property, there is a field called continue on error. So by default, it's not checked. And let's change it to false. So this means if you have any errors encountered in typing into this contact name, the bot will not continue if there is an error. So you can set this continue on error as false. And we do similar things to email, right? So make sure that you change the value into the variable of email, argument of email, and we can set continue on error as false. And same for the subject. So for the subject, let's change that to the argument of subject and set the continue on error as false. Okay, so till now, we should be able to generate this ticket. But also, I want to call your attention on how do you know, or how can you be sure that the ticket is generated? So this is where we left, right? After we click the submit button. So what we can observe here is that if we successfully generate a ticket, we will see that there is a close ticket option, right? So this means we can use the existence of the button close ticket as an indicator of whether or not we successfully generate the ticket. So let's use element exist. So we use this activity and let's indicate the close ticket, this button. So this activity will give us a Boolean value of true or false. And if it's true, it means that yes, there is the element of closed ticket, and then that indicates we successfully created a ticket, right? So here in the output, that's where we use successful, the argument that we created, as the outcome, okay? Okay, what if there's no closed ticket? It means that we do not, the bot did not create the ticket successfully. And in some cases, the bot will just not work, right, if anything happens. So here we want to remediate any potential issues. So for example, if the bot messes up anything to make the bot work, we can always let the bot click tickets, right? Go back to the home page, like where the bot started, so that the bot will be corrected, and so that it can start from the beginning, right? So here we want to use a if then activity. So if we have a successful outcome, then we just need to tell the user by using the message box that the ticket is generated. But if it's not successful, first we tell the user that the ticket is not generated. And then we want to make the bot click the tickets so that it can come back to the original place, right? So then we can use attach browser. And here, because we already created a variable named the Zoho browser, right? So you can find it from the variable. Here, let's first set the scope as the try and catch, okay, and then come back to the attach browser. Here, you can set the input of browser as the Zoho browser. And here, we can use a click button, a click activity, to click the button of the ticket. So this means if anything happens and the bot cannot continue, it can always go back to the home page, right? The original state. So this is a little bit like how we handle the error, but it's still in the try block. So here we actually completed the try block, and then let's go to the catches. So here we can also set the exception as the system.exception, and we can use a log message and set the log level as error, and message can be failed to generate the ticket due to this error. And here we use exception.message. Okay, and also if there is any exception, we can also use the attach browser, the similar thing that we did in the try block. So input as Zoho browser, and we use a click to let the bot click on the tickets, right, to make the bot come back to the original place. All right. Okay, so now we completed the third workflow. So let's save the workflow, and then let's come back to the main. And now we need to connect the main with the third workflow, right? So here let's also use an invoke workflow file, and let's connect to the Zoho automation. And in the import arguments, here we need to connect the values with variables with arguments. So in the contact name, here we are connecting the string contact name with contact name, and also this is string email, string of subject. And here for the successful, it's an outcome that we want to use in the main, right? So here we still need to create a variable named, let's say, a boolean of ticket created, set it as boolean type, and also in the event handler. All right, and let's go back to the import arguments, and let's add the boolean of ticket created here. And click create and click OK. All right, so now we can continue. So remember what I said before, if we have the ticket created, then we want to move the file from the requested folder to the processed folder, right? So we also have a if activity here. So if we have the boolean of ticket created, right? So if it's true, then we want to move the file from the request folder to the process folder. And to do that, we can use an activity called move file. So here we want to move the file from we already have that variable here, it's called string of the request file path. We want to move this file to another folder named processed. Here we can also create a variable to indicate that. So let's go to create a variable, and let's call this as string of processed file path. All right, so here we can actually copy what we had before for the request file path, because we only need to change the folder of requests into processed. Okay. And if we want to further add any information, so what I'm going to do is that I want to add the time of the file being processed. So I'm going to use a string concatenation, and I want to add the time of now, and I want to use file time and convert it to string. So here, now file time is a way to convert the time, let's say October 20th, 2020, into some like a string of just numbers. So it's some number, some time that's machine readable. So in this way, we can kind of timestamp the requests. You do not need to add this, but I'm adding this so that when you rerun the bot, you can store multiple files in your folder. Okay, so here in the destination, that's the string of processed file path, and you can overwrite if you have duplicated files. Okay, so we also want to document what we did, right? So we can use a log message. And here, let's indicate the level as info and say request file move to the processed folder. And otherwise, we just need to provide the information that fail to move request file to the processed folder. All right, and you can also use some message boxes to indicate to the user of what's happening. All right, so let's save the bot, and we should be good to go. Here is a tip: when you are not sure, like whether there are any issues with your project, you can use the analyze file and go to validate project. So you can run that test, and if it says no errors found, and then generally there shouldn't be big issues there. So now let's go ahead and let's prepare to run our bot. So actually in this website, it's okay like if you are in some other places. So, but usually you want to go to the home page first, and then you run the bot from here. Okay, so if I run this, okay, the bot is ready. Please press key. Okay, I press S, and then I first see that, okay, these are the values. All right, so we know that the ticket is generated. And the file is moved from the request to the processed, and now the file has a timestamp, right? And in the request, as you can see, the file has been moved. So it means that our bot is successful. But as you can see, actually the bot is still running, right? Because this is attended automation, so unless you stop it, it will still run at the in the background. So here, actually, you can continue the whole process by just using the hotkey again. So if I click S, send hotkey of S, because there is no file in my folder, right? So it says request file does not exist. So actually, like if I want to continue with the automation, I can get another. So I can actually make a copy of this and then go back to the request, and then I can delete whatever is here, and I can go inside and change something. For example, I can change my name. Let's say we can use Ella, and change an email into okay, and we can leave the subject there. So let's save it. All right, so now if I run the bot, I can just press key S. Okay, so it will start again, and it will go here, and it will generate the ticket for Ella Parker. Okay, so it goes on and on, right? So you can leave the bot running, but unless you use the hotkey of S, the automation won't be triggered. So you can test the bot many times, but I just want to give you a tip that so whenever you generate a new ticket, actually the customers will be stored in your database. So it means that when you want to rerun the bot, make sure that you have different customer name and different email. Otherwise, you cannot generate a new ticket. So you can just delete whatever is in the record if you want to use the same information. But you can always test by using some new data. And as you can see, like if you add the timestamp on your file, like different files will be saved in the same folder. But if you do not add that extra information of the time, every time the request file moved to the process folder will be overwritten. All right, so this is the project for this week, and I hope you enjoy the process, and see you next week.